I think this deck is like licorice. I think people either absolutely love it or do not like it at all. Strong opinions, one way or the other. And welcome to my next video. You probably already saw from the title of this video that I'm going to be sharing about my month with the Thoth deck. And actually, I should say it's more my Thoth season, which for some reason starts in summer for me. So I got this deck about 2 summers ago, and I kind of did a deep dive last summer, and now I'm back a year later, and I have really just had an amazing time studying this deck and learning more about it. It features the artwork of Frieda Harris, and it is called the Thoth deck, but it is also often called the Crowley deck. But I feel like that really does a disservice to Frieda Harris's artwork and talents. I encountered this deck about 2.5 decades ago. I actually did another video on this deck for the hashtag One Deck Gone Wild, where I go into a little bit more depth, but through some fun kind of hashtag prompts. When I first encountered this deck 25 years ago, tarot was not a regular part of my life, although I did have a tarot deck. And I was both very much intrigued by the artwork and also intimidated by it. It just seemed like so many layers, and it was a little, all I can say is intimidating. Life went on, and I occasionally would think about the artwork. I'll see if I can find the card that stuck with me. Even though tarot wasn't part of my life, the artwork really made an impression on me. Anyway, tarot became a regular part of my life in about 2017. And so it wasn't really until, I don't know, last year that I was ready to work with this deck, and it had been calling to me. I guess I came across it and the imagery again, and I was just enamored with the imagery, and here it is. This is the card that really made an impression on me and stuck with me many years later. If you want to know more about it, I think I share a longer story about this in that other video I just mentioned. There are so many videos out there going into this deck. It's been around since the 60s. It was put out, I think, in 1969. So Aleister Crowley originally wanted to create his own version of the classic tarot. And he and Frieda Harris had met together at a party, I believe, and she approached him about going further and sharing his life's work, his esoteric studies and experiences and knowledge in the artwork of the deck. And so if it wasn't for her approaching him about that and pushing for that, this deck likely would have never happened. So he certainly gave her parameters. He gave her specifics about each card, which is, each one is a work of art. This whole deck is a work of art. I feel like this deck is very much her labor of love as well. That's what brought me back to it, honestly, was the artwork. And she did know some things, I believe, about like projective geometry and color theory. I think what attracted me to this deck years later was Frieda Harris's artwork. The symbology, I love symbolism, and I love learning about how symbolism is used in art. And I also really was drawn by the colors. That's another element that makes this deck iconic and unique, is the use of color. It's very intentional. If you knew nothing else about the deck, the colors themselves carry enough weight. It's more about how we experience the impressions that the colors give us as we look at each card. So they speak a language unto themselves, which is just incredible. I just don't know of any other decks that are that intentional. And so that's another aspect that makes this deck so unique and iconic. So I think I've rambled enough. I'm going to share the decks that I have, and then the books that I've used in my studies this past month. And yeah, let's get going. So this deck here, I trimmed this deck by hand. It's a US Games deck, but it really feels like it has the AGM Urania cardstock, if you're familiar, which I really love. It's some of my favorite cardstock. Like, I love this smell, and I love that it's just like this satin finish, and they just shuffle great, and they're smooth, but they're not slippy. This is like, yeah, perfect cardstock in my mind. So this is the large size, and if you are interested in this deck, I would recommend getting the large size because you really want to see all the details of the artwork. After working with it for a whole month, I decided that I would get a backup copy. And this is it. It's the newest 2023 deck, and so it looks very different on the backs, as you can see. And then the cards, just so you can see, these are what the original cards look like, the original borders. But what's interesting about these 2023 editions is these are the most current facsimiles of the paintings. So this is the closest capture of what the artwork would look like in person. And so the colors are different, and you can see here, maybe I'll give you a card to compare. The colors are very different. So these are the colors that Frieda Harris very intentionally chose for the cards. So these kind of more enhanced images that you see in a lot of the decks are not all the authentic color schemes, which I think is important. So I'm glad I got this because I want to experience the actual colors that she and Crowley had chosen. But I prefer these enhanced cards, to be honest, because these ones are lighter and it's harder to see some of the details, but I do appreciate seeing the original colors as well. And there are some that are quite different, so I'm just mentioning that because if you didn't know, or if you had the deck before and you didn't know, you might be disappointed because it is quite a difference. So original, or the closest to the original, quite different. Queen of Cups, one of my favorite cards. Let's just zoom in so you can appreciate the beauty. If you can see her face here, she is just barely visible behind this lemniscate veil here. But this is the one that I was familiar with. So I love this card. I love the colors, but look how different they are. Much more green in the center. There are people out there who collect Thoth decks. Well, it's been around for so long, so there are many different editions, as well as different color variations in the different editions. So it can definitely be a rabbit hole. Yeah, can definitely be a rabbit hole for sure. So I just wanted to share that. Now I'm going to show 3 decks. 2 of them are mass market and 1 is an indie deck. They're all Thoth based. So the first deck I had gotten, and it's this one, which is the Star Tarot by Kathy McClelland. And I'm showing this one first because I got this before I got the original Thoth. And it is Thoth based, as you can see. Now, after I got the original Thoth, I realized how much this is influenced by it. The guidebook for this deck I have used for other decks, for Waitsmith and Thoth decks. It's just a really kind of gentle, compassionate guidebook. It also helps you dive deep into areas that you may need to work on. You can see Thoth a lot here. One note is the astrology is different, so that might throw folks off. And I don't know why. I don't use astrology too much. I mean, I've learned about it because when you work with Thoth, you learn about Kabbalah, you learn about astrology. I know they're helpful. I appreciate those layers, and maybe I will get to learn them in more depth later. Okay, so here's one card that is one of the most amazing cards in this deck. So I mean, this card alone and the guidebook, I feel like are worth just having for that. There's one more card that this Hanged One card is so beautiful. It kind of reminds me like 90s New Age. So yeah, I don't use this at the moment, but I may come back to it. I'm definitely holding on to it because it was just a formative deck for me. It's not a beautiful 7 of Swords. The second deck I got is this one, the Margarete Petersen Tarot. Check out that snake on the back. I love these backs. I edged this one in this kind of wine color. I think I saw that on Janaki's Catamancy Tarot. She edged hers and I just loved that color. I loved how it matched the borders. So the Margarete Petersen deck is really cool in that it's kind of abstract. The majors are more detailed than the minors, as seems to be the theme of a lot of decks that I tend to have in my deck family. It also has more of like a divine feminine perspective, as you can see here with like the Chariotess card, the crone instead of the hermit, Wheel of Life instead of Wheel of Fortune. This is the Hanged One. This Death card is also incredible. And this is just another great example. A lot of Thoth decks or Thoth-inspired decks just have the most incredible artwork and layers of meaning. This would be the Temperance or Art card, as they call it in the Thoth system. That Devil card. So amazing. So these are the majors. And then the minors, I won't go through all of them, but the minors are more abstract. I'll show you my favorite suit, the suit of feathers, which is suit of air. Now, one amazing aspect to this deck. There are so many amazing things about this deck. But Margaret Petersen, or Margarete Petersen, I actually don't know how her first name is pronounced because there's an E at the end. She spent 21 years creating this deck. So it's also a labor of love and, you know, just incredible to me. And the guidebook, which I'll go into actually later, the majors have poems for each major. So this is just another incredible deck. And I feel like, as you can see, there's just this more abstract in the minor arcana, and I feel like the more you look, the more you see with these cards. There's a lot of details like hidden in the layers of paint. So just another amazing deck inspired by Thoth. Okay, the last deck I'm going to show is this one, and this is a new deck to me, and this was one of the only 2 Kickstarters I have ever participated in, and this is the Marea Tarot by Masha Kulinovic, and I apologize for my likely mispronunciation. Now, she's very true to the Thoth in her rendition here, especially in the minor suit. This is, it looks like some sort of photo collage. I honestly don't know all the aspects of the artwork, but it's a modern rendition of the Thoth. And what I really like about this is it kind of takes out, like, the esoteric layers are there, but it's more synthesized, I feel like. And she just did an amazing job. It's just so beautiful. I'm not sure if this is still available. This was an indie deck, and she was selling it on Etsy, I believe, for a little while. But yeah, and so I'm actually working with this one this month. The color themes, the symbolism, it's all here. Like, this is, and I would recommend, if you are able to get this deck, it's a wonderful stand-in if you don't like the original Thoth. This is a really beautiful version. So that is the Marea Tarot, and the guidebook for this one is also really good. I'm going to go over the books that I used and that are helpful. So there are 3 books and 2 small guidebooks. So the first and foremost book that was helpful to me and really kind of made Thoth accessible is this one, Mirror of the Soul by Gerd Ziegler. It contains about as much, I feel like, as a Little White Book in some ways. There's a little bit more to it, like there's an introduction, and this book is great because it gives you keywords, it gives you some of the basics of the symbolism of the card, and then a general meaning. But what I love about it, it also has these questions and suggestions and affirmations. So I feel like this guidebook can work well if you do a lot of journaling like I do. Like, it really is great for like journaling prompts and explorations of the cards, and really connecting us in a personal way. I'll put this off to the side, to the cards. So if you were to ask me which book I would recommend to get familiar with the Thoth, I would recommend this one to start. Next, if you're like me and you really want to know all about the symbolism, this book, The Crowley Tarot, Handbook to the Cards by Akron and Banzhaf, this is the book to get. And so they do go over like the history about the deck and the creators of the cards. But I'm bringing this section up because the book itself is called the Crowley Tarot. But in this section, it ends with, properly speaking, the cards should then be called the Harris Tarot. Thank you. Maybe I'll just start calling them the Harris Tarot. I'm going to show you what I love about this book. So it goes over almost every aspect of the card, like all the symbols. It does a breakdown. I kind of went between this one and the Mirror the Soul book to flesh out like as much information as I could about the symbolism, because it doesn't go over every single detail, but it's very close. So not only that, but this tells you, they give you like for each profile in the majors, there's an instinct, there's a goal with this card. So for example, for death, the instinct is dying and becoming, growing and decaying. The goal is transformation. A guiding principle is the great letting go, or death. There's the light and the shadow and the quality of this card. So at the beginning, they go over the symbolism of the card in great detail. And that's like a majority of it. And then it goes into interpretations. And so like basics maybe about the background symbolism of the card, but then general meanings, a consciousness that the card represents, how it might relate to profession or relationships. Okay, and here's my favorite part, are the correspondences. There's a section of correspondences which goes over like the Hebrew letter, the number, the archetype, tree of life, but it also has I Ching, rune, deities, mythology, cult sites, rituals, and then like artwork, books or literature. So artwork, literature, music associated with corresponding to these cards, and fragrances. So for death, decomposing mushrooms, damp earth, compost, gemstones, astrology, alchemy, and then there's also some quotations as well. So I love that so much. And when I did the one deck Gone Wild, that also kind of connected me to the cards, thinking about the deck as a personality. This kind of helps do that when you think about literature that relates to a particular card, or music. What kind of music would illustrate the death card, or what kind of literature would evoke this particular card, or what would it smell like, you know, as it was mentioned here, if you stepped into this card. So I really like having those suggestions, but also separately that inspiring me to make my own correlations to the cards. So I'm excited to do that, and I think I will maybe at some point. But anyway, this is an awesome book, and this is like, if you were only to get one that covers everything, this is a really good one, because regarding the artwork and the basic background of the cards and the creators, the writing is really great too. I get so many takeaways and reflections about the cards and new perspectives from this guidebook. Okay, and last of the books This is Understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot by Milo Duquette. This is also like one of the most comprehensive books as well. Milo Duquette is just very knowledgeable about the esoteric aspects. What I love about his writing is he brings a sense of levity and lightness and humor to these esoteric concepts, and he brings levity and humor to the esoteric, and he talks about them in such a way to kind of lighten the explorations of this deck and lighten the very deep aspects, very deep aspects to this deck. He also goes over quotes from Harris and Crowley, which is really cool to hear about, like what Lady Frida Harris said to Crowley about certain cards. I guess there's a whole collection of their letters. I think you can find them somewhere on the internet. I haven't done that myself. So another amazing book. And the last two guidebooks. So I mentioned this one, the Margarete Petersen. This is the guidebook for the Margarete Petersen Tarot. Now, the reason I think this is an amazing guidebook is there are poems, as I said, that she wrote for each major arcana, and then which are beautiful, and yet another way to connect with the cards. I mean, these cards do evoke poetry, for sure. Here, let's put out the Queen of Cups. And then in the court cards, she writes as if it's a first person, like for example, the Mother of Coins, Mother of Earth, Queen of Earth, is speaking to you in first person in a poetic kind of way. And then for the minor arcana, these are just more basic meanings, kind of more straightforward, what you would expect from a tarot, like a little white book, but beautifully written and just so much to inspire you. This is an inspiring deck and just an incredibly inspiring guidebook. Actually, would say this is one of my favorite tarot guidebooks of all, because she's just very personal. She goes over her personal relationship, but also just her explanations of the majors, court cards, the breakdowns of these is very, very helpful, I think, especially for a beginner. But so beautiful. Such a good guidebook. And then I wanted to say that the Marea Tarot guidebook is really good as well, in that she goes over the real basics of the symbolism, like the building blocks of every card. But what I especially appreciated was she has the relating cards, the cards that have the same astrology. So for like Prince of Wands, she shows all the minor cards that have the same astrology, which I thought, or shared astrology, I should say. So I thought that was really cool. And she has a nice colorful chart for the astrological decan wheel and the tree of life for references. So I feel like this is a really great one as well. This is a deck I don't have, but I only have one card from. This is the Heindel Tarot, which is also another really amazing deck, so I've heard, and based on the artwork, I imagine it would be, I use it as a bookmark. There's just a metaphysical shop nearby, and they sell single cards. They have them like all scattered in a big box, and this was the one I pulled. Back to Milo Duquette for a moment. While I was doing my deep dive of the original Thoth deck, synchronistically, an episode popped up in my YouTube feed for a show called What Magic Is This that I'm subscribed to. And there was one of their most recent podcasts was an interview with Milo Duquette talking about the Thoth deck. He's so engaging to listen to. I will leave a link below to that episode because he speaks about quite a few things that are in this book. To conclude this video, I did want to say that working with the Thoth, I absolutely adore this deck, and I foresee using it for a long time into the future, and also my Thoth base decks. And I will say that the readings that I have done with the Thoth often are the most profound readings that I've done in my card practice. And I would not say this is a gentle deck, though it has surprised me in that it's actually very compassionate. At the same time, they're very to the point. They are very accurate. I use tarot for kind of self-development, and so they're very accurate in tapping into where I'm at in life and my issues and things I need to look at and work I need to do. And they're very spot on in any regard that I've used them. But I would also say there is a impartiality maybe in the messages. So very Queen of Swords, maybe. That is my experience with these cards. And all right, thanks for hanging out. I hope this video was interesting or helpful in some way, and I'll see you on the other side of this video.